My name is Sophie Bennett. I'm 29, and before the accident, I worked as a pediatric nurse in Seattle. I lived in a small house near Green Lake, the kind with a porch that got just enough sunlight in the afternoons for my overgrown ferns. To thrive, I liked my life, the quiet mornings, the way the lake looked at dusk, the way my patients would light up when I walked into their rooms. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My parents, Gregory and Elaine Bennett, never looked at me the way parents should. I was adopted when I was 3, a fact they never let me forget. Not in words, but in the way my mother's smile never quite reached her eyes when she introduced me, or the way my father would sigh when I asked about family vacations. They had my sister, Hailey, 2 years after they brought me home. Biological. Perfect. The daughter they actually wanted. I spent my life trying to earn their love. Straight A's, perfect attendance, scholarships, none of it mattered. Hailey could bring home a C and they'd frame it. I could save a life at work and they'd ask why I wasn't married yet. Then came the accident. I remember the rain that night. The way my windshield wipers struggled to keep up, the glare of headlights through the downpour. I don't remember the truck hitting me. Just the sound metal screaming, glass shattering, and then nothing. When I woke up, I couldn't move. Couldn't speak, but I could hear everything. "She's not going to make it," a doctor said. His voice low. My father's reply cut through me like ice. "She's not our real daughter. We owe her nothing." My mother didn't even hesitate. "Sign the DNR. If she wakes up, she'll just be a burden." I wanted to scream, to beg, to tell them I was right here, listening, that I had always been here, fighting for scraps of their love while they gave Hailey everything. But my body wouldn't obey me. The machines kept beeping. The doctors walked away, and my parents left me there to die. But ID single quotes T. Somehow, against everything, I held on. And when I finally opened my eyes, really opened them, I made myself a promise. They thought they could walk away. They thought they could erase me. They were wrong. Because when they came back a week later, smiling as they asked about my grandmother's will, they didn't find a daughter on life support. They found an empty bed. And a letter. The first thing I noticed when consciousness fully returned was the smell. That sterile, antiseptic hospital scent that never quite covers the underlying truth of sickness and fear. My throat burned with the ghost of a breathing tube. My muscles screamed in protest as I tried to move my fingers. But I could move them. That was new. A nurse gasped when she saw my eyes open. "Oh, thank God," she whispered, her warm hand immediately finding mine. "We thought..." She stopped herself, but I knew what she meant to say. They thought I'd die. Just like my parents had planned. My voice came out in a broken rasp. "How long?" 3 weeks, she said, checking my 4 with practiced hands. "You've been in and out for the last few days, but this is the first time you're really with us." She hesitated before adding, "Your family hasn't." I know. The words tasted bitter. I heard them. The nurse's face did something complicated. Then anger and pity warring beneath her professional calm. She squeezed my hand again. "I'm Claire. I've been your night nurse most of this month. And for what it's worth, you're a fighter." Claire became my anchor in those first terrible days of recovery. She was there when the physical therapist made me stand for the first time, my legs shaking like a newborn foal's. She smuggled in real coffee when the hospital food became unbearable. And most importantly, she didn't ask questions when I requested paper and pen. Writing was agony at first. My hands, once steady enough to start IVs and squirming toddlers, now trembled so badly my first attempts looked like a child's scrawl. But I practiced. Between painful physical therapy sessions and the endless parade of doctors, I filled page after page. The letter took shape slowly. Not the angry screed I'd first imagined, but something far more dangerous, a comb. Factual accounting of every slight, every neglect, every quiet cruelty. I wrote about the Christmas when I was 9, when Hailey got the expensive dollhouse I'd begged for while I got socks. About the time I broke my arm at 12, and my father sighed about the inconvenience before taking me to the ag. About the college acceptance letters they forgot to open. The more I wrote, the clearer everything became. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about truth. Meanwhile, my body was healing faster than anyone expected. You're lucky, the doctor said. I wanted to laugh. There was no luck in surviving parents who wished you dead. Claire helped me in ways she didn't even realize. One evening, as she checked my vitals, she mentioned offhand, "Your grandmother's lawyer called again today." I froze. What did he want? He wouldn't say just that it was urgent. She frowned at my expression. You didn't know? I shook my head, but pieces were clicking into place. My grandmother, my father's mother, had been the only one who truly loved me. She'd passed away 6 months before the accident, and I'd been too grief-stricken to ask about the will. Now I understood why my parents had come to the hospital. Not for me. For whatever she'd left behind. That night, when the hospital quieted, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my grandmother's lawyer, a kind-eyed man named Mr. Whitaker, who'd always slipped me butterscotch candies during visits. The second was to the only cousin who'd ever treated me like family dot by morning. I had a plan. The discharge process took 3 more days. 3 days of pretending to be weaker than I was, of carefully timing my walks so my parents wouldn't show up unexpectedly. 3 days of perfecting the letter until every word cut like glass. On the day I left, I asked Claire to do one last thing. For me, if they come, I said, handing her the sealed envelope, give them this. Only them, and only when they ask. She tucked it into her uniform pocket with a solemn nod. Where will you go? I looked out the window at the Seattle skyline, the city that had been my home but now felt like enemy territory. Somewhere they'll never think to look. The taxi was waiting when I slipped out the service elevator, my few belongings in a duffel bag. I didn't look back at the hospital, not at the room where I'd been reborn, not at the life I was leaving behind Dot, because here's the thing about nearly dying, it clarifies what matters. And I finally understood that I mattered, even if my parents never would. The letter would make sure they understood it too. The rain was coming down in sheets the day I left the hospital, the kind of relentless Seattle downpour that turns sidewalks into rivers and makes the whole world feel gray and distant. The taxi driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, probably, wondering why a woman so pale from weeks in a hospital bed was being discharged alone, with no one to help her into the car. I didn't offer an explanation. I just gave him the address of a coffee shop across town, one I knew wouldn't be busy on a Tuesday morning. I had $437 in my wallet, the last of my emergency cash I kept tucked in my apartment. My phone was dead, and I wasn't ready to turn it back on yet. Not until I knew what I was walking into. The coffee shop was nearly empty. A college student and hunched over a laptop in the corner, an elderly couple sharing a scone, and a barista who barely looked up when I ordered. I took my coffee to the farthest table, my hands shaking so badly I nearly spilled it. The warmth of the cup grounded me. I was alive, I was awake, and I was about to ruin my parents' lives. I pulled out the burner phone I'd bought at the hospital gift shop and dialed the only number I'd memorized out. My cousin Rachel answered on the second ring. Sophie? Her voice was sharp with disbelief. Oh my God, I've been calling you for weeks. Your parents said you were in a coma? I finished for her, my voice low. Yeah, I was. And then they tried to pull the plug on me? Silence. Then a hissed curse. Tell me you're joking. I wish I was. Rachel exhaled hard. Where are you right now? Somewhere safe. But I need your help. She didn't hesitate. Name it. That was the difference between real family and the people who just shared your DNA. Rachel had always been the one person who treated me like I belonged. When my parents forgot my birthday, she showed up with cupcakes. When I got into nursing, school, she was the one who celebrated with me. And now, when I needed her most, she didn't ask questions. She just said yes. I need to know about Grandma's will. I said that. Rachel went quiet again, but this time I could practically hear her putting the pieces together. Oh, Sophie, you don't know? Know what? The will was read too. Weeks ago, Grandma left you everything. The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. What? The house. Her savings. Everything. Your parents have been losing their minds over it. They tried to contest it, but the lawyer shut them down. Rachel's voice turned grim. They've been telling everyone you weren't going to wake up. That the inheritance should go to them or to Hailey. I closed my eyes. Of course, that's why they'd come to the hospital. Not to see if I was alive, not to apologize. They came because they needed me dead on paper. Sophie? Rachel's voice was gentle. What are you going to do? I opened my eyes and took a slow sip of coffee. I'm going to take what's mine. Mr. Whitaker's office hadn't changed since I was a kid. Same dark wood paneling. Same faint smell of peppermint and old books. The butterscotch candies were still in the same glass dish on his desk. When I walked in, his assistant gasped. Sophie? I managed a weak smile. Hi, Marjorie. Is he in? She didn't answer, just rushed around her desk and pulled me into a hug so tight it hurt my still healing ribs. Oh, honey, she whispered. We were so worried. Mr. Whitaker appeared in the doorway of his office, his usually stern face slack with shock. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, very quietly, he said, Well, I suppose we have a great deal to discuss. The will was simple. My grandmother had left me her Victorian house in Queen Anne, her savings, and a small collection of jewelry that had been in the family for generations. To my parents, she'd left exactly one thing, a single sentence. To my son and his wife, I leave my disappointment. I choked on a laugh when I read it. That was Grandma, never one to mince words. Your parents have been contesting it, Mr. Whitaker said, sliding a stack of paperwork toward me. They've been claiming you were in no state to inherit, that the assets should be held in trust for them, of course. I flicked through the papers, my stomach twisting at the legal jargon, at the way my parents had tried to twist my condition into their advantage. Can they do this? Not anymore. Mr. Whitaker leaned forward, his eyes sharp. You're awake. You're lucid. And as of today, you are the sole owner of your grandmother's estate. I exhaled slowly. What do I need to do? Sign these. He pushed another set of papers toward me. And then, if you're ready, I suggest you go home. The house looked exactly as I remembered it. The wraparound porch, the hydrangeas Grandma had loved, the old oak tree in the front yard where I'd spent hours reading as a kid. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. The inside smelled like lemon polish and lavender, just like it always had. Like Grandma had just stepped out for groceries and would be back any minute. Her favorite sweater was still draped over the armchair in the living room. Her crossword puzzle book sat open on the coffee table. Half finished, I sank onto the couch and finally let myself cry. That's where Rachel found me an hour later, curled up in a blanket, still clutching Grandma's sweater. She didn't say anything, just sat beside me and held my hand while I fell apart. When I finally ran out of tears, she handed me a tissue and said, So, what's the plan? I wiped my face. First, I need my phone. And my things from my apartment. Rachel nodded. Done. What else? I looked around the house, my house now, and felt something harden inside me. Then I need to make sure my parents never set foot in here again. Rachel smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Now that, she said, I can definitely help with. That night, as the rain tapped against the windows, I sat at Grandma's old desk and wrote another letter. This one wasn't for my parents. It was for Hailey. Dear little sister. By now, you've probably realized I'm not dead. I wonder, were you relieved? Or disappointed? I'm giving you one chance. One, meet me tomorrow at the place we used to get ice cream when we were kids. No parents, no lies. Just you and me, If you don't show up, I'll know where you stand, love. For now. Sophie. I sealed the envelope and set it aside. Then I picked up my phone charge now, buzzing with weeks of missed calls and texts, and scrolled until I found the one I was looking for, a news article from 2 days ago. Local couple under investigation after hospital DNR scandal. I smiled. Claire, my nurse, had kept her promise. The letter I'd left from my parents had done exactly what it was supposed to do. The ice cream shop hadn't changed in 15 years. Same red vinyl booths, same sticky floors, same chalkboard menu with flavors that never rotated. I sat in the corner with my back to the wall, a habit I'd picked up in the hospital always. Facing the door, always watching for threats. The bell above the entrance jingled at exactly 3 p.m. Hailey stepped inside. Her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, her hands shoved deep in the pockets of her oversized sweater. She looked younger than 27, more fragile. Nothing like the golden child I remembered. She spotted me immediately. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then she slid into the booth across from me, her fingers tapping nervously against the table. You look like hell, she said. I almost laughed. You should have seen me 2 weeks ago. A waitress came by and Hailey ordered mint chocolate chip and a waffle cone, the same thing she'd gotten every summer as a kid. Some things never change. When the waitress left, Hailey exhaled sharply. I didn't know. Which part? My voice came out colder than I meant it to. That they signed a DNR? Or that they only came to the hospital when they found out about Grandma's money? Hailey flinched. Both. The ice cream arrived. She picked at it, not meeting my eyes. They told me you were brain dead, that there was no point in visiting. And? You believe them? I don't know. The words burst out of her too loud. A couple at the next booth glanced over. Hailey lowered her voice. They're our parents. Why would they lie about something like that? I studied her face, the way her eyebrows furrowed just like Dad's. The faint scar on her chin from when she fell off her bike at 7 and I carried. Her home, she genuinely hadn't known. That didn't make it okay. I heard them, Hailey. My fingers tightened around my water glass. I was lying there, trapped in my own body, and I heard Mom say I wasn't their real daughter. I heard Dad tell the doctors to let me die. Her spoon clattered against the table. Oh my God, yeah. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm so sorry. Are you? She looked up sharply. Of course I am. Then prove it. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket and slid it across the table. Grandma left me everything. The house, her savings, everything, and our parents are going to fight me for it. Hailey unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It was a copy of the will and the legal notice my parents had filed to contest it. Her face paled. They didn't tell me about this. Of course they didn't. I leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. They're going to lose. I have recordings, witnesses, proof of what they did. But I need to know where you stand. The bell over the door jingled again. We both turned. A man in a suit walked in, scanning the room. When his eyes landed on me, he nodded once and took a seat at the counter. Hailey frowned. Who's that? My lawyer. You brought a lawyer to ice cream? I brought a lawyer because I don't trust you. The words hung between us, brutal and honest. Not yet. Hailey stared at me for a long moment. Then she did something I didn't expect. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. With a few quick taps, she turned the screen toward me. A recorded call. Mom's number. Play it, Hailey said. I hit the button. Mom's voice filled the space between us, sharp and furious. Don't care what the doctors say, Hailey. That girl was never really part of this family. If she wakes up, she'd take everything from us. Everything? Hailey's recorded voice shaking. She's your daughter. A pause. Then, cold as ice. No, she's just someone who owes us. The recording ended. Hailey's hands were shaking. I started recording them after you woke up. I didn't like how they were talking about you. I looked at my little sister, really looked at her for the first time in years. The golden child. The favorite. The one who got everything I never did. And I realized something terrifying. She was just as much their victim as I was. I slid another paper across the table. A deed. Grandma's house has an apartment over the garage. It's yours if you want it. No strings. Hailey's breath caught. Why are you doing this? Because someone should. I stood, dropping a 20 on the table. Think about it. But don't take too long. The locks are changing tomorrow. As I walked out, I heard her call after me. Sophie. Wait, I didn't turn around. My liar fell into step beside me on the sidewalk. Well, it's done. I pulled out my phone and opened the news app. The headline made me smile. Prominent local. Couple under investigation for possible medical fraud. Claire had kept her promise. The hospital was pursuing charges. Where to now? My lawyer asked. I looked up at the sky clear for the first time in days. Home. The reporter showed up first. I was making coffee in Grandma's kitchen when the first knock came sharp, insistent. Through the lace curtains, I saw the outline of a man with a camera slung around his neck. I didn't answer. By noon, there were 3 news vans parked on the street. I watched from the upstairs window as journalists milled around, talking into microphones, gesturing toward the house. The headline on my phone read, Parents deny abandoning comatose daughter amid inheritance. Scandal. My father's face stared back at me from the screen. His expression carefully constructed, concerned father, misunderstood. This is a private family matter, he'd told the press. Our daughter is clearly not in her right mind after her trauma. We only want what's best for her. I set the phone down. The second knock came just after sunset. This time I knew who it was before I even reached the door. Sophie. My mother stood on the porch, perfectly coiffed, her designer coat buttoned tight against the evening chill. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread. We need to talk. I didn't move. You have 30 seconds. Her jaw tightened. The press is making this into something it's not. We can fix this as a family. I laughed. The sound startled both of us. You tried to kill me. Her composure cracked. That's not 30 seconds are up. I started to close the door. Her hand shot out, stopping it. You're making a mistake, she hissed. That money should be Hailey's. She's our blood. Something cold settled in my chest. Funny, I thought blood mattered when it was convenient. For you. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, with something like fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that familiar, polished mask. We'll see you in court. I closed the door. The next morning, I woke to the sound of glass breaking. I bolted upright, heart pounding. The noise had come from downstairs. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, then crept to the top of the staircase. Silence. Then a whisper of movement from the kitchen. I was halfway down the stairs when a figure stepped into the hallway. Hailey. She froze when she saw me. A shattered vase lay at her feet, water seeping into the hardwood. I still have a key, she stammered. I didn't think you'd be up yet. I lowered my phone. What are you doing here? She shifted from foot to foot. I brought you something. On the kitchen counter sat a cardboard box. Inside were all the things I'd left at my apartment: photos, books, the quilt my grandmother had made me when I graduated nursing school. And beneath it all, tucked carefully between the folds of fabric, was a manila envelope. Hailey wouldn't meet my eyes. They're planning something. I heard them talking last night. I opened the envelope. Inside were legal documents, petitions for competency hearings, emergency guardianship requests. My parents were trying to have me declared mentally unfit. My hands shook. Why are you showing me this? Because it's wrong. Hailey's voice was barely audible, and because I don't want to lose you again. The words hung between us, fragile as the broken vase at our feet. I took a deep breath. Do you want that apartment or not? Hailey blinked. What? The one over the garage. You in or out? For the first time in years, my little sister smiled. And that afternoon, I met with Mr. Whitaker again. He spread the documents across his desk with a sigh. They're playing dirty. I traced the edge of one paper. Can they win? Not a chance. His smile was razor sharp. But we're not just playing defense anymore. He slid a single sheet toward me. A countersuit. Medical neglect. Emotional abuse. Fraud. I picked up the pen. As I signed my name, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Turn on channel 7. The local news was running an exclusive. A leaked recording of my parents discussing how to handle me if I woke up. Hailey's voice, shaking but clear. You can't just pretend she doesn't exist. My father's reply, I see. Watch us. I turned off the TV. Outside, the first snow of winter had begun to fall. The snow kept falling all night, blanketing the city in a hush that made everything feel suspended, like the world was holding its breath. I sat by the fireplace in Grandma's living room, the countersuit papers spread across the coffee table, watching the flames flicker shadows across the walls. Hailey had stayed. She was upstairs now, unpacking boxes in the garage apartment, but the knowledge that she was just a few dozen feet away made the house feel different, less like a fortress, and more like a home. My phone buzzed. Rachel, you seen this? A link followed. I clicked it, and my father's face filled the screen, a press conference I hadn't known was happening. He stood at a podium, my mother at his side, both of them the picture of wounded dignity. This is nothing more than a vindictive smear campaign by a troubled young woman, he said, his voice dripping with paternal concern. Our daughter suffered a traumatic brain injury. She's confused, manipulated. We only want to protect her. A reporter shouted a question about the leaked recording. My mother's hand fluttered to her chest. That was taken out of context. We love both our daughters equally. I turned it off. The fire crackled. Outside, a snowplow rumbled past. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn their love, all the times I'd told myself their distance was my fault. And now here they were, still lying, still pretending, even when the truth was screaming into every microphone pointed their way. A knock at the back door startled me. Hailey stood on the porch, her arms full of groceries. Figured you hadn't eaten, she said, brushing snow from her hair. I let her in. We didn't talk about the press conference. Instead, we made spaghetti in the same kitchen where Grandma had taught us both to cook. The silence between us comfortable for the first time. In years. It wasn't until we were eating that Hailey finally spoke. They're going to lose. I twirled pasta around my fork. I know. No, I mean, she set her fork down. They're broke, Sophie. I froze. What? Their savings are gone. Dad invested everything in some startup that went under last year. They've been living off credit for months. Hailey's voice was quiet. That's why they're so desperate for Grandma's money. The pieces clicked into place. The urgency. The recklessness. This wasn't just about greed, it was about survival. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Hailey reached across the table, hesitating before her fingers brushed mine. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. The doorbell rang. Exchanged a glance. Hailey stood. I'll get it. Through the kitchen doorway, I heard the murmur of voices, then Hailey's sharp, no. I rounded the corner to find my parents standing in the foyer, snow melting on their coats. My father's gaze locked onto me. Sophie, he said, voice oozing warmth. We need to talk. Hailey stepped between us. She said everything she needed to in the letter. My mother's mask slipped. This doesn't concern you. It does now. Hailey. Didn't move. My father tried a different tack. Sophie, be reasonable. You're not well. Let us help you. I studied his face, the creases around his eyes I used to think were from laughter, the carefully maintained tan that hid the stress. I wondered how many of his smiles had been lies. You're right, I said softly. I'm not well. I stepped forward. But you're the ones who... The morning after the snowstorm, the world outside was blindingly white, the kind of pristine quiet that makes everything feel possible. I stood at the kitchen window, watching sunlight glint off the icicles hanging from the eaves, steaming mug of coffee warming my hands. The house smelled like cinnamon and fresh brewed coffee. Hailey had woken up early and baked, something she used to do with Grandma when she was little. The piece didn't last. My phone buzzed. Mr. Whitaker. Turn on the news. I didn't have to. The notification popped up on my screen before I could move. Local couple files emergency petition to seize daughter's Asetsi. Exhaled slowly, watching my breath fog the window. So this was their next move. They weren't even pretending anymore. Hailey appeared in the doorway, flour dusting her sweater. What's wrong? I handed her the phone. She read the headline, her face going pale. They can't do this. They're trying. I set my coffee down. They're claiming I'm mentally incompetent, that the accident left me unable to manage my own affairs. Hailey's grip on the phone tightened. That's bullshit. Yeah, but it'll still tie everything up in court for months. I rubbed my temples. And in the meantime, they'll drain every account, sell whatever they can. No, Hailey's voice was sharp. No, we're not letting this happen. She grabbed her coat from the hook by the door. Where are you going? I asked. To fix this. I didn't follow her. Instead, I called Rachel. She answered on the first ring. I was just about to call you. Had you seen? Yeah, I sank onto the couch. They're not even hiding it anymore. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then, Sophie, I need to tell you something. The tone of her voice made my stomach drop. What? I did some digging. About your parents' finances. I closed my eyes. How bad? Worse than we thought. Papers rustled on her end. They're not just broke, Sophie. They're in debt, deep, and not the normal kind. I waited. Your dad borrowed money from people you don't want to owe. The implication settled over me like a weight. Oh, yeah, Rachel exhaled. And if they don't get it soon, they're desperate, I finished. Exactly. I thought about the way my father had looked at me last night, not like a daughter, but like an obstacle. A problem to be removed. Rachel, I said slowly, what if we gave them what they want? Silence. Then, you're not serious. Not like that. I stood, pacing to the window. The snow was starting to melt, ripping from the trees in steady droplets. What if we let them think they've won? Hailey came back 2 hours later, her cheeks flushed from the cold. It's done, she said, dropping her bag on the table. I raised an eyebrow. What's done? She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and handed it to me. A video played my parents, sitting at their dining room table, talking in low, urgent voices. Just need to hold out until the hearing, my father was saying. Asterisk. Once we have control of the assets, we can clean this up. My mother's voice, tight with anxiety, and if the judge doesn't rule in her favor, asterisk a pause. Then my father's response, so quiet I almost missed it. Then we disappear. The video ended. I looked up at Hailey. How did you get this? She smiled, but there was no joy in it. I told them I was on their side, that I'd help them convince you to drop the lawsuit. My chest tightened. Hailey, I recorded everything. She took her phone back, their entire plan, the debts, the threats, everything. For the first time since the accident, I felt something, like hope. That night, I sat at Grandma's old writing desk and composed one last letter, not to my parents, not to the judge. I enclosed the video. The financial records Rachel had dug up, the medical reports from the hospital, and then at the very bottom, I added one final thing, a photo of me and Hailey as kids, sitting on Grandma's porch, ice cream dripping down our hands, proof in case anyone doubted of what family was supposed to look like. I sealed the envelope. Outside, the last of the snow melted away, revealing the first green shoots of spring beneath. The courthouse was quieter than I expected. I thought there would be reporters, cameras, the same media circus that had followed my parents for weeks. But when I walked through the heavy oak doors, flanked by Mr. Whitaker and Rachel, the halls were nearly empty. Just the usual hum of legal proceedings, lawyers murmuring to clients, the shuffle of paperwork, the distant echo of a judge's gavel. Hailey met us outside the courtroom. She looked older somehow, the shadows under her eyes betraying nights of too little sleep. They're already inside, she said quietly. I nodded. I hadn't seen my parents since the night they showed up at the house. Part of me wondered if they'd even look at me now. The courtroom doors swung open. They sat at the defendant's table. My father in a suit that had clearly been tailored for a man who hadn't lost so much weight. My mother's spine rigid beneath. Her designer blouse. They didn't turn as I walked past. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes and silver hair, pulled into a tight bun, surveyed us over the rim of her glasses. This is an unusual case, she began, tapping the file in front of her, and I've reviewed quite a bit of documentation. My mother's shoulders TENSED. The judge continued. Petition for guardianship of an adult child, allegations of medical neglect, contested inheritance, she sighed. Frankly, I've seen Messier family disputes, but not many. A ripple of nervous laughter traveled through the room. I didn't join in. The hearing unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Mr. Whitaker presented our evidence, the hospital records, the DNR forms, the recording of my parents admitting they'd abandoned me. Their lawyer countered with weak arguments about misunderstandings and emotional distress. Then the judge played the video Hailey had recorded. My father's voice filled the courtroom, cold and calculating. Asterisk, once we have control of the assets, we can clean this up. Asterisk, a beat of silence. The judge removed her glasses. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, is there anything you'd like to say? My father stood. For a moment, I thought he'd finally show some remorse. Then he said, Your Honor, my daughter is clearly being manipulated. This video was taken out of context. That's enough. The judge held up a hand. She turned to me. Miss Bennett, is there anything you'd like to say? I stood. For years, I dreamed of this moment of finally confronting them, of making them hear me. But now that it was here, the anger had burned away, leaving only a quiet certainty. No, I said. I think the evidence speaks for itself. The judge nodded. Then she rolled. The sun was setting when we left the courthouse. My parents had been gone for hours, slipping out a side door after the judge denied their petition and referred their case for criminal investigation. Rachel whooped, throwing an arm around my shoulders. You did it! I didn't feel like celebrating. Hailey lingered on the steps, watching the traffic pass. What now? She asked. I thought about the house waiting for us, about the life I could finally build without looking over my shoulder. Now, I said, we go home. She smiled, small but real. Yeah. We walked to the car together, the three of us, leaving the courthouse and the past behind.